Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzi, host of the Leaders Without podcast. Today, I have another wonderful, amazing, phenomenal guest for you guys, Mr. Alan Brunton. We had a phenomenal conversation last week. I was like a kid in a proverbial listening to professor at university, just soaking up all the information because he has so much wealth of wisdom to share, so many different areas that I could listen to him talking for hours and hours. So, in a nutshell, he was born in Dallas, raised in Texas. He's done many things in his life. I will summarize them without butchering them, and we're gonna dive deep into each of them in the podcast. So the first thing about him is that you know he had something that not what happened to him way back in the 80s. Not many people could have handled it and could have come out of it. Not only out of it, but stronger. So he had four very hard tragedies with a span of 40 days happened in his life. First, his father passed away, then his grandmother, his brother committed suicide, his girlfriend dumped him. The company he was working for, which he had brought for them $1.2 million in contract, fired him because they didn't have a contract with them. So all of that in a matter of 40 days. So talk about, when it pours, it rains, all of a sudden, all the doors open all at once. So we're going to talk about how I was able to bounce back from that. That alone can be worthy of a book, even a movie, because that is phenomenal. I mean, most of us can barely handle just one of those, but he was able to overcome four of them in a short span. So that's one thing. And then he has had so many incredible achievements. He has had his own cooking show on TV, pro opera singer, and so many things, not to mention all the phenomenal achievement that his father developed, was trying to do before it was shut down by the FDA. He was using a few of the patents that what probably the greatest genius this world has ever known, Nikola Tesla, was invented on. He was working on that. And of course, he was shut down by the FDA and by the big, powerful pharma mafia. So we can talk so much about him because there's so much we can do. And right now, he's doing some amazing things. Is working on optimizing sound frequency, especially the frequency of 432. He told me an amazing story last week. We were talking about that just before going live. There's so much we can cover about him now. He's working on the brain and all that. So wow, we can do, as I told him, we can do an entire, not even a season, maybe a podcast, me and him just talking about each of these. So anyways, without any further ado, Alan, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here, and this is going to be exciting times. I'm just I've got goosebumps right now because I've been looking forward to this. Yeah.
Oh wow, thank you. Honor is all mine, pleasure all mine. So, as I told you just before going live, what I like to do on a podcast is to look under the hood, so to speak, to see what's in your heart, to have a heart-to-heart conversation, because it doesn't matter what type of business you're in, we're all in the same business, which is people's business. When you're looking for a specialist, sure, they all, qualified and have all the credentials, but the one you're going to hire is the one you can connect and relate the most as a human level, as a person. So are you ready to do that with us today, Alan?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. I mean, I'm an open book. And so just read me.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right. So for people who don't know you, tell us, who's Alan as a person and as a human being? We're going to talk about your business in a moment, but first, as a person, a human being, who's Alan?
Alan is a very positive-minded person. And as you tipped upon back in 1985, 86, those 5 very stressful life things that happened within 40 days actually changed my life. I was on a really good moral upbringing, being raised in Amarillo, Texas, in West Texas. And my father was my biggest influence of how to keep your word. And well, pretty much, like the book, The Four Agreements. And so he embedded that into me, and I got to sit around inside of his workshop and watch him think, because he was trying to he was like you said, he was using technology of Nikola Tesla in a way that nobody had ever used it before. And I don't believe anybody has since. I still have quite a bit of his documented certified laboratory results of what he was doing back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But it was just the thought of him doing things that nobody else was doing and making discoveries to be able to help humanity become better, make their lives easier. I mean, he was using frequencies on metal pads and actually using that for weight loss by putting those into, I mean, this, like I said, this is back in the 60s. I mean, we see these things being sold today, but it was like with electronic frequency vibration to keep all the molecular structure of fat cells and tissue to be able to be vibrating. The friction itself would cause it to be able to just melt away. And I was just like really proud of my father, but it wasn't mainstream. And so because it wasn't mainstream, a lot of people made fun of him, and except in other things that he used to really excel at. And so that was like, wow, he went through all that adversity and he still came out and raised 3 boys and just had a very dedicated wife, my mother, that was able to seem like, well, life is good, even though we didn't have a lot of money, but we never went hungry. And we were always able to find things to do in a creative fashion. So by that creativity, I mean, take for example, for entertainment, we would go out like Sunday after church. My mother would fry a fried chicken picnic basket, and we'd load up the station wagon and go out to the farmlands. And there in Amarillo, it's flat. I mean, it is flat. Hardly any trees out there whatsoever. And because it is so flat, and you know, Texas is known for a lot of tornadoes. Well, we would drive out there until we found an actual twister and then parallel drive on a road next to it, which direction it was going, pull in front of it, and then put down the gate on the station wagon, make ourselves a plate of the picnic lunch, and watch that twister go by. I mean, now, and people go, well, weren't you scared? I went, no. I mean, it's not like it has a soul, goes, oh, there's some people I'm going to go mess with. No, I mean, you just have to think logically.
That's
you have
amazing.
To take the fear factor out of everything. I mean, one of my things I want to do, actually a couple of things. I want to zip line. I haven't done that yet. I want to jump out of an airplane. So, you know, I mean, we had an ex-president do it. Why can't I? Sure, yeah. Why not? I mean, it's so many other things that I look at. And whenever I see somebody, there was a high school experience when I was singing in choir, and I was like the number 2 tenor in my high school choir. The number 1 guy, oh, what a beautiful voice he had. And whenever my choir director said, well, you need to be able to go and compete for the all region choir, then all state choir if you make it. And I went, why? And he said, because there's a lot of girls out there. And I went, oh, wow, okay.
Oh,
so he's got my attention. Yeah.
Yes.
And so whenever I put my name on the list, that other tenor, who was my friend at the time, walked up to me and said, yeah, but now you have to compete against me. Oh, he should
bring
not
it on, brother. Bring it on.
And so I studied so hard. I studied every single moment I had, and just to be the very best that I could be. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I got number 1 in the entire state of Texas. He got number 2.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's part of who I am, is that if anybody has done it before, I can do it too.
And better.
And that's how I even got into software. Because I remember back in 1982, there was a local Cheers bar that I was a regular there and people knew me. And I went in there one night. One of the 2 bartenders was somebody I had never seen before. And this kid was gnarly. He was 26, I was 28. He was cursing at the customers going, hey, tip jar, come on. And I was like, wow, this guy's going to get punched. Somebody's going to yank him across the
Yeah.
bar and start
If
hitting him.
not, shoot him, you know?
And he came over to me and he goes, man, I can't wait till I get the funding in from my company so I can make some real money. And I went, well, what kind of company? And he said, computers, software. That's where the money is. So I said, well, that's pretty cool. I like that. My name's Alan. So I reached my hand out there to shake it. And he shakes my hand and says, Mark Cuban.
Really?
So,
Wow.
so yeah, I mean, if Mark Cuban can make billions of dollars off a piece of software, I think I can too. Because number
Wow.
one, yeah, he was pretty aggressive back then, and he still
Yeah.
is today, but he's actually softened up a little bit. I've seen
Yeah.
him talk a couple of other times here locally because he does live here in Dallas.
Yeah. Wow.
So
That's one of
no,
the coolest stories I've heard in my podcast. Wow.
no, it's yeah, he was a hustler, but as I said, that's who I am. If it has been done, then I can do it too. Now, my technology, which we're not going to talk about for a while, but is something that's never been thought of. And several neuroscientists, neurosurgeons have even claimed that, saying it's just amazing. It's logical.
Yeah.
But how did you even think about this? And I said, well, I used to love to sing. I started singing when I was 5 years old. And from all that singing that I did all the way through grade school and junior high and high school and college, it became a very substantial part of my life, of my being itself. And music was just the energy that flowed through me all the time. So that's the reason why that I got more into the scientific aspect, just following my father's footsteps. Because going back to Nikola Tesla, one of the most famous quotes that he made was, if you want to find out the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And my father was doing that, but my father was an electrochemical engineer. And so he was going more towards the chemical side of it, whereas I'm just doing more in the sound aspect, because in the study of not genetics, but in the study of epigenetics, which is looking down upon genetics, we understand that every single cell in the body has receptors. And yeah, let's see. And is this a video podcast, or is this just
Video.
audio? Okay,
Both.
right.
I
So
see
you
your
see,
screen. Yes. Yes.
yeah. So you see behind me, then every single cell has receptors, and each one of those receptors is influenced by 4 environmental influences: chemical, heat, light, and sound. And we see, because of cymatics, how that actually works. And I've been seeing things like this. I'm saying, wow, how come people aren't using this? Why? I mean, why is people just go, oh, that's pretty. Look how it changes shape. Now, come on now. Let's just think about, there's my buddy.
Yeah.
If we can think about how to be able to manipulate matter, and energy itself is actually matter, go the opposite direction, is just energy condensed. So anyway, getting back to my upbringing, where I was raised, I used to explore. This is a picture of the lighthouse outside of Amarillo, which is
Did you
in a
climb it as a
canyon.
boy?
I could not get up there. There was another plateau. I'm not that adventurous, because I never had any training, and there weren't that many people doing it back then whenever I was that young. But I spent a lot of time in this canyon.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And just, here's another example of doing something. This car behind me is a 1954 Hudson Hornet. Now, my oldest brother actually bought a 1971 Jaguar and had it professionally restored, and it won like national championships. And I just looked and said, well, wait a second. The guy who rebuilt it never finished high school. So I've got the smarts that he does. I can do the same thing. So when I bought this car, I took it out into the backyard of the house there and worked on it every single day. And I wasn't really a mechanic, but my father did teach me how to use tools. So I was apt at that. But I didn't know how to take out a transmission or take out an engine and rewire the thing, and just so many other little bitty things that I didn't know how to do. I asked. I went to shops. I asked people, how do you do this? How do you replace this? How do you, I mean, it was, and that's one thing that most men up to, well, let's say even my age, maybe even a little bit older, that were contradicted, or that women will say, well, why don't you stop and ask for directions if you're lost? No, 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 I know where we're going. You know, I'm the guy that will get out of the car and ask directions, because I want to make sure that I'm not going to waste time.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, because I mean, everybody, I mean, look at Thomas Edison. A reporter asked him one time and says, well, doesn't it make you feel bad that you had 10,000 failures? And he said, oh no, I just discovered 10,000 ways that didn't work.
Exactly.
And
What's an expert? An expert is someone who mastered all the ways to fail so that they can succeed. You know, in business, it's important to know, but what to do. But it's also equal, if not twice as important, to know what not to do. Not just in business, but in life as well.
Yeah, I see that so many times. You know, the other career I think I told you about was that I was in the restaurant business, and opened, I think a total of 33 different restaurants. Most of those were contracted for other people, and one of a kind. But a lot of the people there think that, you know, running a restaurant is so easy because you look at the general manager, the face, the maitre d', they're always smiling and they're always happy and energetic, but they just don't realize that it's an 85-hour-a-week job to be able to own and operate and manage your own place. And quite a few times I would do that for other people. And in my contract, part of it was just to hire the crew and, well, from the ground up, getting all of the permits for building and such, creating menus. But my contract mainly was just to be there probably for anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks after the place had been opened, because I had trained management to be able to take over and be able to let them know what the concept of the entire restaurant operation was. And so many times I would come back like 6 months or a year later and the place was closed. And when I contacted the owner and said, what happened? They would say to me, well, the management team took off in a direction that I didn't know how to recover from. And I said, well, you should have called me. And he said, well, your contract was up and I didn't want to get back and, you know, just thinking I'd be able to handle it myself. And that's what happens with people that are not in the industry. So many people think, well, I cook for 50 people at a family reunion. Sure, I can do a restaurant.
Not the same thing, buddy.
No, not at all. So no, it's called dedication, keeping your word. You know, to be able to look for new ways of developing things. One of the things that I do, and because of my father, was if I see something, I always try to figure out, okay, so that's what society says it's made for. How used? And a simple example of that is a highway sign that says, it might say, you know, Dallas 60 miles and Fort Worth 45 miles. Well, how else could that sign be used? If you take it off the poles and you put it on 2 55-gallon drums, you've created a table. Or if you bend it at a 90-degree angle, you've created a shelter. Yeah. Or if you have it sideways, you can put it up and then use it as a gate into a property. I mean, it just, multiple ways of doing things. And that's part of what I always like to do. Some people would say, well, you just like messing with people's heads because, well, that
Yeah,
was
that's
part of
fun.
my father too.
That's fun,
Yeah. And when people say, I've never heard of such a thing. Well, now
The
you
first
have.
time for everything. Yeah.
And I am the expert on it. So my father used to do that all the time.
One thing that's phenomenal. One thing that I really want to maybe move back a little bit. You mentioned that meetup with Mark Cuban. That's phenomenal. Now, did you end up doing any work or any business with him after, or even
No,
in that, or?
no. Actually, my company right now is still raising capital so that we can expand what we're doing. And that capital we're looking to raise is just $1 million. But I went to see Mark, I guess it was a couple of years, it was pre-COVID. He was talking at a breakfast meeting at a Microsoft store in a very large shopping mall here. And it was the breakfast series was all about leadership. Well, the thing about when Mark was talking about being on Shark Tank, he said, you don't see but only 10% maybe of all the filming that goes on, because everything else is behind the scenes and editing. And if I invest in your company, it is not venture capital. It is vulture capital. I own you. Every single day, you will report every single nickel that is spent on every pencil. You will submit that into my crew. They will analyze it and give me numbers that I review every single day. And if you don't return exactly according to the term sheet that you signed, if I invest in your company, I will take your company. I will put 10% more into it to make it look better. And then I will sell it for a 200% profit because my name is a brand and people think if I'm involved in it, it must have value. And so he does like 100 to 150 of those deals every year.
Yeah.
It's a good business model.
Yeah.
But not really the kind of people that or value proposition of getting funded that I want to go to. Now, Mark has a great way of making money, and that's mainly the way that most venture capitalists look.
Yeah. So when you went to that event, did you have an opportunity to speak and share that first encounter with them, and how did you react?
Yeah. Oh no, the first encounter? No, we didn't have time to talk about that. I did ask
that would be
him
a very good icebreaker and to get you closer and separate you from all the other people, because you have this connection with him when he was a nobody, was just starting,
Yeah. Well, I mean, he has many times talked about his old days of here in Dallas. When coming out of college there from Indiana, he was a big basketball fan, and he moved down here with 4 of his college friends in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment.
Yes.
And he talks about that all the time. I mean, because it was only 2-bedroom, 2-bath, he had to sleep on the living room floor until they got a 3-bedroom. And once they got that third bedroom, well, they also got another roommate. So there's like 6 guys, back in the 80s, and that were just hustlers. Yeah, he was one of these guys, and their whole crew would go out and buy like 50 kegs of beer and go to an old warehouse and pass out all these flyers that when people are coming out of all these nightclubs at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, saying all the beer you can drink, $20. Wow. And they made a killing on that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So no, that's one of the great things that I admire about Mark. He, as I was talking about, he learns how to be able to see an opportunity and make make money on it. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Wow. See, so I love talking and listening to you because you have so much to share. That anecdote with Mark was probably one of the coolest one I've heard. But now let's get back to the podcast here, and I want to now ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you as a person. Now, tell us, Alan, what makes you happy as a person? Sorry, what makes you happy as a person?
Well, number one, the use of the language and the way you put it, it doesn't work. Nothing makes me happy. I have to choose to be happy. And so many people don't realize that we have the ability to choose our emotional experience. And I get into a lot of meditation. I actually went through a program back in 2009, going into meditation, and while in the meditative state, found that I was able to choose an emotional experience. And so part of what I did was, center myself and feel that the flow of the energy was just right. And then I would think of something kind of historic memory that happened where I knew that I could feel that emotion, and would bring about the chemical responses of the glands letting out all these chemicals that put together like a recipe for a cake, and would cause happiness or joy or fear or doubt or all these kind of things. And I practice that every single morning at this time. Mainly, I bring about the emotional experience of happiness. So what brings about the happiness in my own life right now is that I have to first realize that anybody else and what they're doing or what I see is not making me happy. I have to be able to do that. And that's probably something I would love to have tattooed on my forehead, so that when I look in the mirror and go, oh yeah, I have to live that life.
Awesome.
So
Cool. Now tell us, what makes you come alive? What makes your heart sing?
oh gosh, watching the light bulb go off over somebody's head, where they have a great aha moment. Those experiences that I told you about, back in 85 and 86, was really, it just stopped me in my tracks, and it made me reevaluate how I was living my life. And I told my next door neighbor, and he told his girlfriend, and she told her girlfriends. Next thing I know, they're inviting me to a motivational self-awareness seminar.
Wow.
Taught by a man named Alexander Everett. It was 2 weekends. Alexander actually was English born. And when I went to those workshops, they were 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday for 2 weekends. And I was learning about stuff that was so, I just could not believe the things I was learning about. And Alexander was actually from England, and he came over here to, first off, and he was a very spiritually motivated man. But then once he got over here, he was going to become a minister of Unity Ministries in Kansas. And then he started studying that most of that was based on Christian understanding and belief system. And he said, well, this is too confined, too limiting to think. And so he just traveled around the world. He started meeting with all kinds of gurus and shaman and politicians and world leaders. And it was just amazing. People like Sai Baba that have been documented to be seen in multiple places all over the world, yet he's not there. You go, okay, so what does that mean? It means it happened. Now, how do we recreate it? And that's the discovery proposition that I'm all about. If we know that something has happened and we have documented evidence that it's happened, how can we replicate it? And those things include telekinesis, remote viewing, ESP. I mean, all of these things that we know the mind can do, but we don't know how to replicate it.
Sure. Or so, maybe we do know, but they've been so suppressed that we kind of forgot about them, and that we just need to reawaken them.
Yeah. This man, like I said, Alexander Everett actually wrote a whole series, a program called Mind Dynamics. And part of the fun thing about it was that he, during this workshop, he had several administrators there, dimming the lights, putting people together, moving chairs around, the sound, et cetera, et cetera. But it was also one of those people was a man named Werner Erhard. And yeah, the founder of EST, and all of those people said, "Hey, we can make a lot of money at this." And Alexander said, "It's not about the money." And they looked at each other and then looked back at him and said, "Yes, it is. See you, bye." And that's whenever they took off and formed EST, Livespring, the Forum, all these other self-empowerment groups. But Alexander's was like, "I'm going to give you this information and you can take it if you want. It doesn't mean anything to me, but I'm getting paid to be able to give you this information and to be able to hopefully give you a better way of looking at life." And we'll talk about the part two of that, because there was a lot of meditation that went on during that time. And there was, how can I say, I'm reading a book right now by Dr. Bob Davis. And that book is called Unseen Forces and the Integration of Science, Reality, and You. It's a phenomenal book, breaking it down into how and why we think, and then how we can actually use the brain and make better, proper choices and expand on its own capability into the aspect of rewiring your synapse into a neuroplasticity way of helping ourselves become better human beings.
Wow. Awesome. Cool. Fascinating journey. Now, you like traveling, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When I used to sing opera, boy, every time I got to go transatlantic, get over to Europe,
Yeah.
I was in heaven.
Now,
Even though I'll go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, finish your sentence. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, when I was in college, I had to study French, German,
Oh, wow.
Italian, Russian, Hebrew, Spanish, and Latin to be able to know what I was singing on stage.
How many languages do you speak now?
Oh, just English. That's all I speak. But I mean, I can get myself into trouble at ordering off of a menu just about anywhere in the world.
That's awesome. Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Now,
And well, I was going to say that one time I tried using Spanish when I was over in Italy.
Oh, yeah.
And I forgot, because they're pretty similar, but I ended up trying to use some slang Spanish, because here in Texas, everybody has to speak a little bit of Spanish.
Yeah, sure.
And I used some slang that was used over here, and I made some people really look at me like I was crazy. I was looking for a clean public toilet.
Oh.
And my translation came out to, "Where is a happy toilet?" And they thought I was some kind of weirdo looking for some perversion or something. But so I learned, okay, no, speak English, let people know that. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow, that's funny. Now, let me take you a different type of traveling down memory line. Go back to when you were a young boy growing. When we're kids, people around us, family, parents, teachers ask us, "So, Alan, what do you want to become when you grow up?" What was your answer back then as a young boy?
Oh, gosh. Well, my first response, I was raised in a Lutheran church school environment.
Okay.
And I thought, watching the pastor there of that church, he always had this calmness about him. He was always helping people. And I wanted to emulate that. I wanted to be
mesmerized by him. Okay, wow.
Yeah. Plus also the founder of the Lutheran Church, Martin Luther, he's still to this day my hero, because he's the guy that, wrote the 95 Thesis and put it on the church door. And then the Vatican actually put a contract on him to kill him. And so he went running all over different countries. And I thought, man, that guy's got a set of kahungas, that, wow, it's just, and he did it because he knew it was the right thing. And I just looked at it that way and became very, that's just the way that life should be. People should live what is inside of them, and that they're passionate about, and be able to, we're here to explore our own possibilities, but part of that is, once we get our skill sets in, is to be able to help others and
Absolutely.
be of service.
Absolutely. Wow. Now, growing up, what was your relationship with school? Did you love school? Did you hate school? What was your relationship?
Well, and you have to think about West Texas, and Lutherans are like, huh? I thought they were only in the north. Well, there was a few churches in Texas. And part of that was that my parents wanted to actually keep us away from, my two older brothers, myself, keep us away from public school into a more supervised environment. And then on Sundays, we would be able to meet mostly with our teachers, or they would, and just say, hi, how you doing? And see if there was any kind of problem. You can't really do that in a public school unless you're at a PTA meeting. But no, this was able to happen every single Sunday. So, but because it was such a small environment, I remember my first grade class had 28 students, and then the second grade had like 24, and going all the way up through sixth grade. When I graduated from elementary school, there were only 13 in my sixth grade class.
Wow.
That's how small it was. Part of growing up in those first couple of years, I remember in second grade, the teacher would give us an assignment, whether it was reading, writing, arithmetic, drawing. Arithmetic and problem solving were my forte. And I was always, and we'd be sitting there figuring out what the answers were. And as soon as we finished, we'd had to stand up next to the side of our desk. And I was always the first one to stand up. And I got I got really disappointed watching that so many people in my class just couldn't get it. And they would take so long to figure out a problem. I'm going, what's wrong? I mean, I was thinking.
What class was that?
Well, this was like math.
Okay.
And I was actually so good at the math that I was able to forecast the difficulty of the next question from the previous questions, and be able to then logically come up with the right answer on multiple guess questions. And even the placement of, okay, A, B, C, or D. And I figured out then a system so that most of the time the answers were, I didn't even have to know what the question was, because looking then at the answers, I could pick them out from there. And then I would go back and read what the question was and say, well, yeah, I'm right on with that. So it was a different way of thinking altogether. And people just could not understand how I was able to do that. I mean, we had our aptitude test in second grade, and I did rank in the the highest 3% of the country in problem solving and math. And so I was pretty much bored with school.
I can imagine. Wow. That's awesome. Now, what was your very first job?
Oh, gosh. Very first job. 9 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah. My whole family in Amarillo, there's not really much to do there. So there was like 5 bowling alleys. And my father had a heart attack, and part of the physical exercise for him was to get back into bowling. And so he used to go bowling. Then my mother started, then my 2 older brothers started, and they were actually so good that all 4 of them had been up on television for bowling. But since I was so young, there was nobody there my age to play with or go bowling or shoot pool with, except for one kid. And his father owned a cafe. And the cafe at the bowling alleys back then weren't just, your burger and fry pickup joint. No, we're talking full service. I mean, chicken fried steaks and uh, 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 Mexican food, and besides cheeseburgers and hamburgers and all these different sandwiches and salads. And I went back into the back of the kitchen one day, and my friend was washing dishes, and I said, "Hey, we can go bowling for 25 cents a game. Come on." And he went, "No, I got all these dishes to do." And I said, "Well, let me help." And so he had like 5 or 6 or 8 bus tubs of dishes. And I started, there was a big power sprayer to be able to wash everything off, and a big 5 horsepower garbage disposal that was so powerful you could almost put a tree trunk through it. And then the stainless steel dishwasher that washed the dishes like that. I thought that was just so much fun. And I turned around when we finished it up, and his father had 2 cheeseburger baskets in his hand and said, "This was ordered and they don't want them. So here." And I went, "And free food? Oh my gosh, this is the life for me."
Amen.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I talked my parents into talking to the owner and said, "If you would just leave a few bus tubs of dirty dishes from Friday night in the kitchen and allow Alan to come in and wash those Saturday morning before his bowling, and then for payment, if you'll just give him a meal of his choice." And
Wow.
that was my payment.
So not even any money, just the free food.
Well, it later on turned into money because I was pretty, I had a system down. I was so fast, and I actually started whenever
Training the other people.
Well, when the owner was actually cooking, he'd get a telephone call, and without him coming back in, he was stuck on the phone. I would go over and start flipping burgers or pull out the stuff out of the deep fryer, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, "You did all that?" And I went, "Yeah." And he was like, "Well, I may have to keep you on here full time."
Let me make you
So,
manager.
yeah, well, yeah. At the age of 9 years old. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
That would have been a
Now we-
great tagline. Yeah.
yeah. But so, yeah, that was my first job. And then after
Wow.
that, I got a paper route like every kid does. And then still, it was just going back into the restaurant business.
Mm.
I remember, like I said, a Bonanza sirloin pit, and then another steakhouse, cooking behind the line of that, and then got into fast food. McDonald's. Oh, have I got stories about McDonald's?
Oh, I
Oof.
can imagine. You can do an episode just on that. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Some juicy ones, I hope.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
it goes all the way back to whenever I poured a gallon of Everclear into the orange soda syrup canister.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a little scamp back then. I mean, kids were going to go to the midnight movie, and they said, "Oh, give me a Coke." And he's like, "No, you want the orange." "No, give me a Coke." "No, you want the orange."
That's
And-
funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. Amazing.